I used to believe that betrayal announces itself, that it comes crashing in like thunder, impossible to ignore. But the truth? Sometimes it arrives quietly, carrying a suitcase and calling you sis. When Michael told me his sister was moving in, I didn't hesitate. He'd mentioned her before, a half-sister from his father's side, someone who'd been struggling financially after a breakup. "She just needs a place to stay for a few weeks," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It'll help her get back on her feet." I nodded. Of course. Family helps family. He smiled. That easy, charming smile I used to believe in. I had no idea those words would echo in my head like a curse later. The first time I met her, she swept into our house like she'd always belonged there. "Grace," she said warmly, wrapping me in a hug that lingered a bit too long. "I've heard so much about you." She was younger, maybe early 30s, with a cascade of dark hair and eyes that seemed to sparkle at the edges of every compliment. I smiled back, though something about her energy made me straighten my posture. "It's nice to finally meet you, Leah." "Leah," she repeated, grinning. "Feels good to hear it here." At first, everything seemed fine. She offered to cook dinner, she helped with laundry, she even watered my plants, and though she never quite did it right. I told myself she was just adjusting. After all, Michael looked happy to have her around. They laughed often, shared inside jokes about their dad's bad cooking and childhood chaos. But sometimes I'd walk into a room and their laughter would die mid-sentence, replaced by a silence too heavy to be casual. I pushed the thought away. Paranoia wasn't my thing. Then came the little things. Her toothbrush appeared next to Michael's in the holder, not in the guest bathroom where she stayed. Her perfume lingered in the hallway outside our bedroom. And one night I found her slippers under our bed. I remember holding them, heart pounding, telling myself there must be some logical reason. Maybe she'd borrowed something. Maybe she'd been cleaning. I was so good at making excuses for people I loved. And a week later, I was setting the dinner table when I overheard them in the kitchen. Leah's voice, soft, teasing, Michael's, low, familiar, intimate. I froze. Then I heard her laugh. The kind of laugh that belonged in whispered confessions, not family dinners. When I walked in, they both went still. Leah's hand rested on his shoulder. "Oh," she said quickly, withdrawing it. "We were just talking about a funny memory." Michael smiled too easily. "Yeah, Grace, you'd laugh if you'd heard the story." But the silence that followed wasn't laughter. It was tension disguised as domestic peace. And that night I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, feeling the distance between us like an open wound. He slept easily. I didn't. At 2 a.m., I got up for water. On my way back, I passed Leah's room. The door was slightly ajar. Light spilled out, and there they were, sitting close on the bed, whispering. His hand brushed hers, and she didn't pull away. I turned quietly, my heart breaking in slow motion. The next morning I acted normal. I smiled, made breakfast, poured coffee. Leah joined me, humming a tune, wearing his shirt. I froze mid-stir. "That's Michael's," I said softly. She blinked, looked down, then smiled, that same infuriatingly sweet smile. "Oh, he lent it to me. I got cold last night." Cold, in the middle of summer. My hands trembled. I forced a smile, excused myself, and walked outside before I said something I'd regret. The garden had always been my sanctuary. But that morning, even the roses seemed to wilt with me. Over the next few days, I watched them carefully. Michael had started taking late-night calls. Leah began spending more time in the living room after I went to bed. I began noticing whispers cut short, glances that lingered too long, and one evening, laughter that came from behind a locked door. When I confronted him, he brushed it off. "You're imagining things, Grace. You've been stressed lately." Maybe I had, but not enough to mistake infidelity for imagination. Still, I bit my tongue. Because that's what loyal wives do. We hope we're wrong until the evidence screams otherwise. Then came the night everything shattered. It was late. I couldn't sleep again. I went to the kitchen for tea and froze. Michael and Leah stood by the counter, her hands on his chest. They didn't see me. Her voice was soft, pleading. "You can't keep lying to her forever." Michael's reply broke something inside me. "I just need more time." I stood there, shaking, my mug slipping from my hands and crashing to the floor. They both turned, guilt painted across their faces like a confession. "Grace," Michael started, voice cracking. "It's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" I demanded. "Because it looks like my husband and his sister can't keep their hands off each other." Leah stepped forward, tears forming, or maybe pretending. "Grace, please." I cut her off with a glare sharp enough to slice glass. "Don't. Just don't." Michael tried to explain how Leah wasn't really his half-sister, how they'd met years ago, how he thought keeping her close would help him end things cleanly, as if deceit could ever be clean. I stood there numb while he confessed to months of lies, to introducing her as family so I wouldn't suspect, to living two lives under one roof. When he finished, there was silence, the kind that comes right before something breaks forever. I walked to the door, opened it, and said quietly, "Both of you, out." They left that night. Together. I sat in the dark afterward, staring at the empty space where our wedding photo used to hang. I'd taken it down while they packed. The air smelled like betrayal and roses, the ones Leah had complimented the first day she moved in. For days I barely spoke. Friends called. I ignored them. Work emails piled up. But somewhere between the tears and the silence, I realized something. I'd been mourning a man who was still alive, and a love that had died long before I found out. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon there was a knock at my door. It was Leah, alone. Her hair was messy, makeup gone, eyes swollen. "Grace," she said softly. "Please, I had nowhere else to go." I didn't invite her in. She told me Michael had left her, that he'd drained their savings, that she'd found messages from another woman. Karma, it seemed, had an impeccable sense of timing. I listened quietly. She begged for forgiveness, for understanding, for closure. I didn't give her any of it. Instead, I said calmly, "You wanted my life, Leah. Now you can keep what's left of it." And I closed the door. A month later, I saw Michael again, in the grocery store. He looked thinner, older, defeated. He smiled weakly. "Grace, you look good." "I am," I said simply. He nodded, eyes full of regret. "I made a mistake." I tilted my head. "Which one?" He looked away, unable to answer. And in that moment, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not the kind that comes from revenge, but from reclaiming my own worth. I went home, brewed myself tea, and sat by the window. The same window where I used to wait for him to come home. This time I wasn't waiting for anyone. Because I'd learned something through all of it. Betrayal doesn't end with the betrayer. It ends when you stop letting "he told me she was family" Maybe she was, just not mine. I used to think losing him would break me, but what broke me wasn't losing him. It was believing I needed him to be whole. Now, when I pass a mirror, I don't see a wife who was replaced. I see a woman who refused to stay where she wasn't respected. And that, I've learned, is the real definition of family, the one you build within yourself.